Okay, how many of you went to sleep last night? Did everyone go to sleep just like good little girls? Oh, good. 3 of you. That's really good. All right. While we're getting settled down, let's see, in the teen section today, we sang, how many of you know Row, Row, Row Your Boat? Since it's, okay, good. So in that session, we sang Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and we left off one word every time through. How many of you have done this before? Most of you have. So now, I don't want to hear it low. All of us have big mouths. We all know that ladies, we act like we don't, but we all do. So everyone can open your mouth and we can all wake up. And we're going to leave off one word every time. You ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the row, row, row your boat gently down, row, row, row your boat gently, row, row, row your boat, row, row, row your, row, 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 row. Okay, good. All right. Pretty good. Take your hand like this. Pat yourself on the back like that. Okay, good. I'm glad that you're good sports because really there's no way you can work with children unless you lose yourself. And I think, if you're dignified or feel like, you're too, too sophisticated to sing a children's song, then you probably should go to I don't know the session for you. You should go to the back and just cover your head up or something. Because we've been talking about Mrs. Evans, if there's one thing, it was lose yourself. Whatever she was doing, she lost herself, and that's really what we all need to do. It's really a joy in life. So I want to talk about teaching children to work. Sometimes that's a dirty word, but we'll pray and then we'll get started. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for all the ladies. I know that I don't know all the trials and problems they had getting here, but I know there were many because the devil never likes us to be in a place where we can grow in the Lord. I know that it's been a blessing for me to be here. Thank you for all the hard work that's gone into it. Now, you know that I've spent a lot of time. I prayed a lot, but yet I realize that it doesn't matter how much time I've spent unless you don't direct my thoughts, and unless you don't meet with us, then we've all wasted our time. I pray that would not be the case. Help us to learn something that would make us more effective as we work with our children. Amen. I jotted down several statements for you. The first one says, if you want your children to work hard, you need to work hard yourself because you are their example. And I'm glad that I was raised in a home where I was taught to work. A lot of parents today, as I've looked around, would rather do things for their children instead of having them do it. Now, the problem with that is that children learn to be lazy. And I agree, when your children are 2, it is much easier to pick up their toys yourself than you have to tell them to do it. You have to tell them how to do it. You have to punish them if they don't do it. You have to praise them when they do it, and then you have to continue with that until they learn to do it on their own. And that's why so many people today really do not take the time to teach their children to work. But yet, Brother Hiles over and over said work is spiritual. If our children do not learn to work, we have lost the next generation. Because God cannot use someone who will not work. In Exodus 20, verse 9, it says, God wrote, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. That is one of the 10 commandments. And I believe that God expected every child of his to work. And I just wanted to ask several questions. And remember, I'm here too. First, do you make a list every morning of things you need to do? You don't have to tell me, but anyway, I'm just asking. You could answer for yourself. Do you mark things off your list? Do you have a good attitude about work? Or do you complain often about it? Is your house neat and organized most of the time? Now, only you can answer that, but yet I think that if we are not learning to be good workers as far as our home and keepers, then we will never train our children to be. I'll share one story that I don't really like to tell, but anyway, I was raised in a neat, well-kept home. My mother was a hard worker, and she taught me to work. But there was my mother-in-law she was one of those, every closet in her, if you open any closet in her house, every towel was in perfect order. You know, you open it and everything was by color. And really, that's a good way. I've tried to do that. But that's the way. Anything you looked at, everything was perfectly organized. Now, they were coming, this has been years ago when we lived in Tennessee, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law were coming to spend Christmas with us. And I don't know about you, but I was on a crash program to get everything done before they got there. And usually I had 4 pickup times a day for our children. You know, before lunch, before the nap, before my husband came home from work, and before bedtime, we picked up everything so the house would look neat. Well, anyway, this day I was making, I know these sound really ugly, but they're kind of nice. They were paper mache ice buckets, and they were made with Kleenex and glue and water. I know it sounds terrible, but they did look pretty. But anyway, I was on this, and I was making 5 of them. Well, I had all made but one, and I thought, the last day, I've got to really scrub the house tomorrow, because they're coming the day after tomorrow. So today will be the day of finishing the ice buckets. So I put my card table in the living room. This is drippy. You dripped off your elbows. And my kids were young. I thought today, I'll just let them play. I mean, in my house, but they were just playing. You know, they weren't picking up. And you know, when your kids realize when you're not picking up, I mean, and I thought, as long as they're happy, what difference does it make? I'm finishing this. And they had toys from one end of the house. I had my laundry. I had done the laundry, but my clothes were on the den couch, you know, just there. And they had toys everywhere. And it was getting close to lunchtime, and I thought, just a little more, I'll finish this, and then they'll go to sleep, and I can start my massive house cleaning job, and we'll live happily ever after. Well, right before it was almost noon, and we heard a knock on the door. Now, my house we lived in the woods. I did not have a lock. You know, everyone just walked in, so I heard the knock. I had the glue all over my hands and arms, and I looked, and what did I see? My in-laws came 2 days early. And, you know, and I wish I could say that I was overjoyed to see them. Actually, I wanted to die. You know, and they could not walk in the den. There were too many toys. They could not sit on the couch unless they sat on top of the laundry. And the dishes from breakfast were still in the sink where I was waiting. I mean, it was horrid. And I just, it was very, very embarrassing. And I learned a lesson that day. You know, you should really plan ahead better than that. But if we live that way, how can we have our children to learn to work if we are like that? There's a poem that I liked growing up, and I thought I would read it since I like it and I like to listen to it. It's called Sermons We See, because it doesn't matter how much we tell our children to work if we don't do it ourselves and we're wasting our breath. And I'll get my glasses so I can even read it. It's called, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather one should walk with me than merely show the way. The eye's a better pupil, more willing than the ear. Fine counsel? Confusing. Examples always clear. And the best of all the preachers are the men who live their creeds. To see the good in action is what everybody needs. I can soon learn how to do it if you'll let me see it done. I can watch your hands in action. Your tongue too fast may run. And the lectures you deliver may be very wise and true, but I'd rather get my lesson by observing what you do. For I may misunderstand you and the high advice you give. There's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live. And of course that applies to every part of life, but I think especially to work. If we are unwilling to work, then our children will be lazy as well. And I believe that God blesses diligence. That's why he said in Proverbs 6, go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Who without guide, overseer, are rulers. So we're to work hard regardless of who is looking at us. We're to work hard, but not because we want to, but because God demands it. So the first thing, work hard yourself. If you don't know how to work hard, then you can always learn. You know, there are a lot of things in my life I'm still working on, and nobody ever arrives. And as soon as I get one conquered, then God tells me about another one that I have to work on. So I just decided that I'm never going to really get to the place where there's nothing to work on. Our children will learn from us. The next thing I wrote down is have specific jobs for children to do every day so they'll know what to do without your having to tell them. Do you know, all of us hate to be told every moment, so we established certain jobs that all of our children were required to do, and we expected them to do it. You think, well, what if they didn't do it? Well, my husband made a rule that before you come to breakfast, we had breakfast every morning at our house when our children were still there at 6:30. Now, before you came to breakfast, you had to be dressed, ready for school if you were in school, or dressed if you weren't. You had to have your room cleaned and your bed made. Now, if you came downstairs and you didn't have your room cleaned and your bed made, you did not eat breakfast, because the Bible clearly says in 1 Thessalonians, for any... Oh, wait just a minute. Let me read it before I murder the verse. Oh, it's in I don't know if all of a sudden I'm having a blank. Who can look that up for me? It's 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Someone look it up for me. When you can get it, stand up and say it out real loud. And I could look it up, but I don't want to take the time. For this we commanded you, even as we were among you, that if any man should not work, neither should he eat. So God is very clear. I didn't make that rule. God didn't. That is 2 Thessalonians 3:10. So my husband just told our children, if you don't have your bed made, if you don't have your room cleaned, then you will not be eating breakfast. Now, my children love to eat. All of us do, don't we? I mean, I love to eat. And therefore, it was very rare that our children missed breakfast. But if they did not do the work, they did not eat. And you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to call them lazy, sluggard, and slothful if they don't do it. You just simply have to say, if you don't work, you don't eat. Now, some people have said to me, well, that is really mean. Well, then you make up your own rule. You know, we did that because we felt it was God's rule. But if you want to figure out a better one, that's fine, because children will do whatever you require them to do. People have said to me, well, my children share rooms and they can't get along and decide how to clean it. We drew a line in the room. We said, this side of the room is your side, and this half of the bed is your half. And if you're sharing the room and the bed, then you will make up your half, and the other will make up their half. You know, there is always a way to figure things out, rather than just give up because you have an obstacle. I promise you, as long as I've lived, I've found that Satan will always put up obstacles for things that are important. And if Satan can say, it is too much work for you to teach your children to work, and you let them get by with not working, then Satan has won a great victory. So we always had specific jobs for them to do. If we had 4 children, our younger children were taught by our older children. When it got to making a bed, then the younger ones learned from the older ones. You think, well, mine don't get along. Ours did. Our rule at our house was, if you cannot get along, if you cannot receive instruction, then you will be doing everything together until you do. If they called one another names, then I sent them to the bathroom, and I rubbed soap in their teeth and told them their mouth was dirty and needed to be washed, and so they would both not get a drink for 5 minutes until they had a clean mouth. Now you think, well, that's mean. It's very effective. It was very rare that our children had to have soap in their teeth. We live in a day when children rule homes. And children decide what they will do instead of what the parents tell them. And there are many cases in the Bible where God gave the responsibility of rearing children to parents, not for children, for parents to rear children, not for children to rear parents. And we got the thing reversed, and Satan is very excited about that. If I believe that work should be fun. If you make work fun, children will love to do it. You know, when little children, we always had a game. I would say pick up the toys, and 4 times a day they pick them up, and it was fun. I'm glad that our children are raising their children the same way. Now, I don't go around training my grandchildren. You know, I play with them and I have fun. I figure I serve my time. It's my children's turn to train their grandchildren, their children, my grandchildren. But the other day, it wasn't a month or so ago, we were babysitting our 2-year-old grandson named David. My husband needed some white shirts, and they were having a sale at Penny's. So he said, my husband hates shopping. So he said, why don't I just drive down? We'll go to one store. You know, I love shopping. That's why he said one store. But anyway, he said, we'll go to Penny's. We'll take David, and we'll go right in and buy my 2 white shirts and come right out again. So I said, all right, we'll go. So we went into Penny's. They were having a big sale. Well, we went in. Of course, when they have a sale, there was stuff on the floor. And I was helping my husband find the right size of shirts, and David was standing behind him. All of a sudden, I hear someone singing, clean up, everybody clean up, everybody clean up. I look around, and David, age 2, on the floor, they had those tabs and collars, those plastic tabs and collars. They had some of those white cardboards that stick in shirts, and he had a whole handful of all this stuff that he had found all over the floor. And of course, I guess he thought, I have to clean up at home, so now that I'm here at the store, I'll just help too. so here he is with his handful of trash. And so I went over to the man at the cash register, and I said, sir, would you happen to have a garbage can behind your counter? And he said, why? And I said, well, my grandson is part of the cleanup crew. He looked, he says, wow, there's a first time for everything. But that was not a natural thing. We are naturally lazy. He learned that because his mother has taught him to clean up. And by the way, his room is clean. He knows how to pick up his toys. And that doesn't just happen. It's something that has to be trained. But it's more pleasant to be around children when they know that. I have lots of things for them to play with, but when he comes to my house, his parents make him pick up the toys he's played with, and I say, wow, David. I have several other boys that come. That is such a good job. I'm glad you come to visit because you always clean up all the toys, and it's easier for me, and it makes me want to see them come and visit more often. So the next thing, you give them give them specific jobs. What is the first thing? Can you remember? Learn to work hard yourself. The second thing is give children specific jobs every day so that you don't have to be constantly telling them. Now, I don't mean a child can't do something if you tell them, but we had our boys cleaning the cars, feeding the animals. We had our girls doing the dishes, setting the table, helping with the laundry. And it doesn't matter what job you give them, but they need to have set jobs. We did not pay them to do their jobs. My husband said, this is part of what you do because you live in our house and we are buying the food and paying the rent, and this is what you get for living here. The third thing is that praise if your child finishes the work that you give them. You praise liberally. Do you know, ladies, in Brother Howe's book, How to Rear Children, he talks about probably the tool that's most neglected in working with children is praise. And that is true. If you tell a child, pick up your toys, and he doesn't pick them up, we spank them. We'd said one time, pick up your toys. If they ignored that direction, then the board of instruction was finding its way to the seat of knowledge, right? And we didn't have to be mean about it, but that's just the way it was. But when they did, sometimes we punish for wrong behavior, but yet we're quick. We just ignore. When they do something good, we just breathe a sigh of relief and go on. But praise always makes children want to do the right thing again. And I think if we are not using praise liberally, then we are neglecting a very important tool. My mother was a master at this. And I remember when I was probably about 6, my job was cleaning the bathroom. And I would, it took me a long time, but I remember working. showed me how to do it. And I remember I was so proud. The first time, probably about 6 years old, I had cleaned the bathroom all by myself. And I looked around and I thought, wow, this looks pretty good, I think. But I went to get my mother, and she stood in the door of our bathroom when I was little, and she looked around. She says, wow, it's practically perfect except for one small thing. And she said, now, can you look and tell me what it is? And I looked, and when I looked, I noticed that the towels, we had a towel rack in there, and the towels were scrunched up, just like, and I went over, and I fixed the towels, I folded them so they were straight, and I came back and looked at her, and she says, perfect in every way. And I'm not sure it really was. She hadn't even, swiped around. But, what that made me want to do every time I cleaned the bathroom, I wanted to do it perfect in every way. And I never again, that was my weekly job, and I never again forgot to straighten the towels. And so I think we as parents need to find the right things our children are doing and praise them liberally. You think, well, how do I know? And we always taught our children that you have to give your best. The Bible says in Colossians 3:23, whatsoever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men. And we taught our children that anything less than your best was a sin against God. And that's true for me as well. If there's any job that's less than my best, it is a sin. And that we told our children that. Now, when the children are little, they love to work. But when they get a little older, they lose that love quickly. and so I noticed that when our children got to be like in the 5th, 6th grade, they would still do their jobs, but they started getting sloppy. They would make their bed, but it was not quite as good as they had made it when they were like a little younger. So, and ladies, God gave us a mind. So I thought, what can I do? Because I don't want to accuse them of not giving their best if they really are. So I came up with this idea that really worked great. I said, we are having a contest. We had, our children were, at that time we had 2 bedrooms, and we divided the room in half. Both our boys shared a room and our girls shared a room. And I said, we are having a contest for 5 days. After you go to school, I'm going to check the rooms. The person with the best room for all 5 days, I'm going to take out to get breakfast. And we'd go to someplace like Burger King or McDonald's, and I would check the rooms. Now, when they really wanted that, you don't have to use a great reward. Children like little things. They mainly like approval from us. We are certainly quick to condemn. It's good for us to approve. So I would check each room. I wouldn't announce the winners until the end, and I would announce who was the winner, and we'd go out to eat. But, I found out during that week just how well they could actually do their room. And then after that, if they didn't do it as well, then I knew that I could correct them. And that was a way that I found out how well they could do it, and I could praise them if they did it right. Now, I didn't care. I had, as long as they did their room to the best of their ability, I had some children, after they got older, that they would sleep on top of their beds. Rather than make up the bed every day, they would decide that they would just not make it. They would just sleep on top of the bedspread with a blanket. Well, I didn't really care. Now, my daughter-in-law's not in here, is she? Is Dawn in here? No, anyway, I used to say, this was when they were teenagers in high school, I used to say Kevin was the worst at that now. He did have to fold up his blankets and make it neat, but he would always sleep under the blanket on top of his spread, so he could just, fluff up his pillow and fold up his blanket, and that was going. I wondered, I used to tell him, someday when you get married, I hope that you don't make your wife sleep on top of the spread. So anyway, I have a daughter-in-law, Dawn Cowling, that's here, so maybe I hope all however 200 of you would feel free to ask her maybe sometime today or tomorrow. Don't say I told you to, just ask her if she always sleeps on top of her spread every night. we were visiting in their home last summer, and I was actually sleeping in Ashley's room. She was having to sleep on the floor, so we were sleeping in Ashley's room. And one morning I said, Ashley, let me help you. She's 8. Their daughter Ashley is 8. And so I said, Ashley, she came in, I was getting ready to clean up the room and make the bed. I said, Ashley, I'm going to make up your bed. She says, Grandma, let me show you how to do it. This is the way. And she was very, she had to show me exactly how the sheets went, how all the, comforter went, how all the animals, that she has several pillows. They all said, Ashley, you are such a good girl that you can teach me how to make the bed. But, that was really good. She knew exactly how every pillow, every stuffed animal had to be in its exact right place. The fourth thing, now first let's go over it. The first thing is you work hard yourself. The second thing is what? You give your children specific jobs. The third one is that you praise them when they do what they're told. And the fourth one is you punish if they don't. Okay, we've already discussed the 2 Thessalonians 3:10 rule that if you don't work, you don't eat, right? Okay. I remember, and my husband, you do not have to scream and yell about it. In fact, the Bible says in Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. You can, if you make the rules, you can very calmly tell your child what you want him to do. You do not have to scream and yell, because when you do, and if you become angry at your child, it makes him fight you back, and it'll wreck your relationship. So, we have several things. I remember one time our son Kevin, who's now a pastor in Arizona, but my husband left home. He was probably about the 6th grade. My husband said, Kevin, I want the lawn mowed by the time I get home today. Well, it would have been better if he'd mowed it right away, but you know how kids are. My husband had told him, and I know one time after lunch I said, Kevin, do you remember what your dad told you? Yes, Mom, I'm going to get it done. But he didn't. And so my husband came home from work about 5 that afternoon. The lawn was not mowed, and so my husband didn't say a word to Kevin. He just walked into the kitchen. He said, take his plate off the table. And I did. In a few minutes, we always ate right away after my husband got home from work. So Kevin walked into the room. He looked at the table, noticed that in his place, the plate was missing. He did not say a word. He just turned around, walked out the door, and we heard the lawnmower start up again. But, and by the way, people say to me, well, did you let him eat after he finished mowing the lawn? No. But he ate breakfast the next morning. And that was the last time that he didn't mow the lawn when my husband told him to. And why? It was fair. My husband had told him, so he had to be punished. One of Kevin's jobs also was taking out the trash. Our boys took turns taking out the trash. And when they got into high school, my husband's philosophy was, if you keep your children very busy, they don't have time to get in trouble. So our sons, they weren't greatly talented athletes, but they played every sport that Hammond Baptist offered, because my husband said once they're playing sports, they're going to be too tired to get in lots of trouble. So they played all of it, but then they also studied, and then they also had their jobs to do. But I know that the boys took days, but they were to take the trash out before they went to school in the morning, and Kevin was in high school, and my husband had to remind him several times about taking the trash out. Well, my husband said, Kevin, I'm not going to remind you about this trash again. It is your job, and you're old enough to do it without being told. Well, then it wasn't too much longer when the trash was not taken out, when Kevin went to school. So my husband took all the trash in the kitchen that he was supposed to take out, pulled back the covers on his bed, and just dumped it all in. And then he covered it back over again. Now, Kevin didn't say a word about that. But, of course, he had to clean his bed, take the trash out, and wash his sheets. But that was the last time he ever didn't take the trash out when he was supposed to. And you think that's mean. No, it was very effective. Now, there is not just one thing you have to do, but you have to make it cost them more to do their own thing than to do what they are told. I remember Keith was always he was in junior high. I think my husband always said junior high is a disease. You have to somehow you have to get him through it. But anyway, his job, now Kevin was already in college, so now he has gotten to the place of taking out the trash, and we had a long driveway, rock driveway, and we had 2 metal trash cans, and our trash man came once a week. So Keith's job before breakfast was to get those trash cans out to the street. And one morning, about 10 after 6, he was out there. Now, instead of the way he was supposed to do it was to lift the trash can, carry one trash can out there because we didn't have a wheel on it, and then come back and get the other one. And all of a sudden, I was in the kitchen, and we heard this sound that would be waking the dead. He's dragging both metal trash cans the length of the driveway out to the road. I guess he's in a hurry or something. So my husband walks out to the back porch and says, "Keith, that noise is going to wake the dad along with all of our neighbors. So pick up that trash can and take it silently to the street." Well, he walked back in, and we could not believe it. In a few more minutes, he was dragging the one trash can still over the rocks. And so finally, I didn't say anything. So my husband walked out there, and I didn't know what he said, but in a minute I looked out there, and there was Keith. He was walking down the driveway with the trash can and back again. Down, and what my husband made him do, he made him carry each trash can to the street 7 times, carrying it. So that meant he made 14 trips from the back of the garage down to the street, carrying that trash can. And we had some neighbors, their name was the Garbus family, and she never calls me in the morning, but the phone rings, so I go over there. It is probably by this time about 6:20. She goes over and she said, "Hello, this is Mrs. Garbus." And I said, "Hello." I thought maybe someone had died in her house or some other weird thing. And she said, "This is really none of my business, but I just noticed that your son keeps going up and down the driveway with the trash." I guess she thought we had the world's largest trash collection after 14 cans. But I said, "Actually, he's being disciplined." Oh, she says, oh, okay. But that was the last time that we ever had to correct him for making a noise by taking the trash cans up and down the driveway. But some of my children were kind of slow learners, but they did learn after a while. One other thing we did with beds, if the child could not make his bed right, we had them make all 7 beds the next morning. If they were getting sloppy, and it wasn't me, I always just told them, if you are being sloppy, then I feel you need the experience. And so then tomorrow, you can make them all, and you can make them to please the children. That was really a big day. They walked around. You had to make the person's bed while they were watching, to satisfy them. And so that did not happen very often. Number 5, build a close relationship with your children so they want to please you. We've talked about that. I think the greatest thing, if you are close to your children, how do you get close? You tell them you love them. You spend time with them. You scripturally correct them. You touch them in the right way. If you are close to your children, they will want to work and please you. But it's not like instant mashed potatoes. You can't just go to the store and buy one. It takes a lot more time if you do it the right way. Number 6, make sure older children work away from worldly influences. If you have teenagers, one wrong friend can destroy your teenager. Learning to listen to the wrong music can destroy your teenager. The wrong crowd. And I'm for working. I'm for teenagers working. But I mentioned earlier that for 8 years I was in charge of the corn detasseling. That was the hardest job I've ever... You did that, right, April? Okay, April, she knows that. But it was a hard job, not because of the teenagers. I love teenagers. But because of the parents. I didn't have any trouble. I had to fire many teenagers. I never had a bad attitude, or at least they didn't show it to me from a teenager, but I did from parents. And the reason people will say to me, why in the world do you do that? You know, getting up, I had to get up at 2:30. I had to be on the bus at 4:15. We worked in the mud. You froze until 9 o'clock, right? You sweltered from then until 3, until you went home. You worked with a corn rash. You worked when the mud was sucking the soles off your tennis shoes. You worked, sometimes the conditions were less than pleasant. You know, I did that because I wanted my children to learn how to work, and I didn't want them to work at McDonald's or Burger King where they would be influenced by the wrong crowd. And so, therefore, they learned to work. From 7th grade, they could make enough from anywhere from $600 to like $1,200 in 3 to 6 weeks. And when they were working, we set up a bank account for every one of them. My husband had to sign, and then they used that money to buy what they needed to buy. But they learned to work. And if children learn to work, they will not throw their money away. Now, after they worked that hard, they made about $50 a day, but they earned it. You try it, walking 8 to 15 miles a day through the rain, the heat. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it because they learn the value of money. And that's important. You know, in the story of the prodigal son, we all know that story, right? You know, the prodigal son demanding his inheritance when his father wasn't even dead. You know, he goes to his father. Personally, I think that young man had not been taught to work hard. Otherwise, I mean, my father died. I cannot imagine going to him before he died and demanding my inheritance. In fact, when he died, my brother and I agreed we didn't want anything that belonged to my mom. You know, we didn't. But I believe if that young man had learned to work, he would not have demanded his inheritance. He would not have squandered his inheritance with the wrong crowd and the wrong friends. He would not have disappointed his parents, and he would not have been feeding pigs. He eventually did come to himself, but he lost his reputation. He lost his inheritance and had to spend the rest of his life working for his older brother who hated him. And so I think we ladies have a responsibility to teach our children what the Bible says clearly, and that's to work hard. Now, if you want to know more about working, I have a lot more stories in the book my husband and I wrote, and I would like to give 2 of those away. I would like to give one away to the lady who has the most children. So if you have, where do I start? If you have 10 children, anyone have 10? If you have, let's start at the bottom. If you have 5 children, stand up. 5. If you have 5 children, stand up. Okay. And if you can, if you have 6 children, we'll go on up, and if we pass yours. So you can stay standing if you have 6. 7. 7 if you have 7 children. 8. 9. How many do you have? 6. Who has how many? How many? 8. Is there anyone else who has 8? 8? Okay. There. Do you want to come and get it? She probably already knows all the answers. And what is your name? Veronica. And you're from? Oh, wow, from Faith Baptist. Well, that's wonderful, Veronica. And that's great. Let's give her a hand. Just to make arrangements. You thought you had trouble making arrangements for your 2, right? And to make arrangements for that me. Okay, then I would like to give one to the one who has the youngest child. So if your child is a year or younger, would you stand? If you have a child who's 1 year or younger, stand up. 1 year. 1 year or younger, stand up. Okay, we got... Everybody keeps going up. It makes me wonder if you know what you have. It makes me worry. Okay, 1 year. Okay, let's say 8 months or younger. If you have a child 8 months or younger. Okay, if you have one 6 months. Let's try 5, 4, 3. Wait. You both stand back up. When was your baby born? Oh, wait, you've got another in the back. Okay, that's all right. Are you still up or you stood back up? Okay, if you have a baby 3 months, 3 months? 4 months, okay. How old is yours? 3 months. When was your child born? January 18th. When was yours born? What? December. So can anyone be... Oh, wait, in the back. When was yours born? Wow. Okay. Anyone that has a baby since January the 25th? Well, I guess you're the winner. Do you want to take it to her? Who is she? I can't see that far back there. Who is that? Where are you from, honey? Bakersfield. Okay. That's great. Let's give her a hand. And I have one more. I have a sheet. If you would like a sheet, I have a sheet to give you that with all the main points. But I have one poem. And sometimes it's discouraging if you have children, and sometimes things don't work out just like you thought they should. And if I can find it. Girls, do you have one of those sheets to give me? Do you have one? If I can have it. If you think you've tried everything and it's not quite working, then I have this poem to encourage you. It says, "It couldn't be done. Somebody said it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with a trace of a grin on his face. If he worried, he hid it. He started to sing as he tackled a thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody said, 'You'll never do that. No one has ever done it.' But he took off his coat, and he took off his hat, and the first thing we knew, he had begun it. With a lift of a chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubting or quit it, he started to sing as he tackled a thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands to tell you it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. But just buckle in with a bit of a grin on your face. Take off your coat and go to it. Just start to sing as you tackle the thing that cannot be done, and you'll do it. Of course, you and the Lord. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for these ladies. Thank you for the